Call to order the regular board meeting of June 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be given by the Anchor Bay Junior Air Force ROTC. Please rise.
Color guard, stand up. Carry colors. Forward, march. Post colors. Present arms. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms, ready, face. Got out.
Thank you. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer LaFata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Berry is here.
All members are present. Item 4, presentations. 4A, presentation by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks to Clerk Berry for the designation of Certified Municipal Clerk. I believe we have...
Good evening. My name is Terri Kowal. I'm here to represent International Institute of Municipal Clerks, or IIMC as we've long used since it's such a long name. Cindy Berry is a member of IIMC, which is an international association of municipal clerks. It's education-based. It's extremely varied in its education, and it's certainly a broad education for clerks to keep them up to date on everything that's going on everywhere in the clerking world, as a matter of fact. Cindy has fulfilled all of the requirements for a clerk to become a certified municipal clerk. That's really quite the accomplishment. I'm very proud of her. I've known Cindy since she first started here. Actually, I knew her before she started here, and had the opportunity to mentor on a couple of things, and we certainly spent time together on educational issues. Cindy has worked very hard for this. I know sometimes it just seems like you go to an educational conference and that's it, and you get your certificate, and in this case, it's truly not, that's not the case. There are only 246 current certified municipal clerks in the state of Michigan, so I'm very proud of her. I hope that you are. I have a certificate to give her on behalf of IIMC and the President, Mary Kaiser, and a pin for her to wear. The job that we do as clerks, I have lots of experience as a municipal clerk, 27 years, as a matter of fact, between Shelby Township and the city of Auburn Hills. It's really a very demanding job because the laws change all the time, as I'm sure you're aware. The education requirements for a clerk, the election information changes on a daily basis, freedom of information, any of the rules for clerking changes so often that we really need to be at the top of our game for education just to be in touch with everything that's going on. So I'm very proud to give Cindy her pin and her plaque on behalf of the IIMC, and I hope that she continues on to get her Master's of Municipal Clerk also. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations to Clerk Berry, and thank you, Terry, for the presentation. 4B, presentation to the Township Board by Plante Moran regarding our 2017 fiscal year audit. And Pam and Chrystal are here from Plante Moran.
Hello, my name is Pam Hill. I am an audit partner with Plante Moran, and I have here with me today Chrystal Simpson, who is an audit manager as well. We both have worked on the audit for Chesterfield for quite a few years, and we're here today to cover the results for the December 31st, 2017 audit. We did have quite a lengthy draft meeting with the 3 full-time elected officials where we went through these statements in a lot of detail, which we don't plan on going through all 50, 60 plus pages tonight. However, we're more than happy to answer any specific questions. We are just going to kind of highlight how the year went and a couple of the funds, and then also talk a little bit about the letter addressed to the Board of Trustees as well. I do want to point out, so we spent about 400 hours this year auditing the books and records of the township. So we're out here for a few weeks with quite a big team. So not only are we here, when we're here, we have to ask a lot of questions, but we also know that your team has to get prepared for us to come out as well. So we want to thank Vicki and her team. We really deal with pretty much all the departments here at the township, so we appreciate the professionalism that we receive when we're out here. I do want to talk about a few pages in the financial statements, the opinion letter. I think you all received, I know, a PDF copy of that, I think late last week. So we did once again issue an unmodified opinion, so that's the highest level of assurance that you can receive, that the numbers as they are stated are free from material misstatement. So it doesn't talk about the financial condition, but merely just talks about the numbers as they are presented. So Chrystal's going to talk a little bit about the financial condition and how the year ended up, and I will turn it over to her.
So if you could turn to page 13 of the financial statements. This is the statement of revenue, expenditure, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds. So this is everything other than sewer and water. General fund revenue was about $7.2 million, which was comparable to 2016. The state shared revenue increased this year by about $262,000, and that was offset by a decrease in charges for services of about $327,000. The total expenditures for general fund were about $6.5 million. Those were also comparable to 2016. You do see that there's a public safety line this year in general fund. That was about $176,000. That wasn't there in 2016. However, what you don't see this year is a transfer out to fund the police fund. Last year that was about $3.5 million. So you did see that transition up because of those other funds handling the police fund this year. Overall fund balance in general fund increased just over $1 million. The ending fund balance was about $9.5 million at the end of the year. Capital outlay decreased about $251,000 as well compared to last year. That does fluctuate just depending on what the capital needs are of the township each year. The next 3 columns on this statement are the police department fund, the fire department operating fund, and then the fire department equipment fund. Next year, those will all be combined into one public safety fund. But overall, if you combine these together, there was a decrease of fund balance of about $1.3 million. There was 2 fire trucks purchased this year, though, that were just over $1 million. So again, depending on capital needs, those expenditures can fluctuate. So it's always good to come up with a capital plan for multiple years, just so you can build those into your budget going forward. If you look at page 10, this is the balance sheet for those same funds. You can see the components of fund balance there at the bottom. So there's restricted fund balance, committed, assigned, and then unassigned fund balance. So for general fund, we look at the unassigned fund balance. At the end of 2017, it was $9.3 million, and that was about 144% of the current year expenditures. In 2016, that number was about $8.3 million, and that was about 82% of the prior year expenses added with the transfers, since those were recurring in the past. If you look at page 17, this is the water and sewer fund.
Wait, can we just, sorry.
Sure,
Can I
go
jump in really quick? So I think just kind of big picture, just to give you, so kind of summarize what Chrystal talked about in terms of the funds and where they ended up. So I think altogether, I mean, the general fund had a good year. We know that you now have combined the public safety millages. We know management's been working on estimates to see, is that millage really going to be able to kind of support our funds as they are now, and looking at those projections. So A big piece of that, and Chrystal mentioned it, is a capital plan because, as you know, with fire and police, right, they're very capital intensive. So we know we've had discussions with management on a capital plan. We do think it is very important because operations is obviously a big piece, but you still have to be able to eventually fund all the capital needs of those departments. And so you do have a lot of money, a decent amount of money in the fire equipment fund that you'll be able to use for funding as you go forward. But as your community continues to grow, it's obviously going to continue to be something that needs to be a big focus. And I know you're all well aware of that. But just to kind of point out, so the three funds combined, as Chrystal mentioned, I think when you take out capital, we're just about like break even. So I think it'll be a good metric to continue to watch as you move forward with that combined public safety fund and just ensuring that those revenues continue to cover operations there.
All right. Page 17, the first column you see presented there is the sewer and water fund. The total operating revenue is about $14.1 million this year. That was down about $343,000 from 2016, but that did fluctuate just based on the consumption. The total operating expenses were about $14.7 million. Those were up about $152,000 from 2016. That was primarily related to increases in the cost of water as well as the cost of sewage treatment. So that fund had an operating loss of almost $600,000, but the good news is you're still growing. So you had an offset with tap fees, benefit fees, and some capital contributions. So the fund had an overall increase in net position of about $754,000. So at the end of the year, you had net position of about $58 million. And of that, about $12.2 million is cash and receivables. So that did tick up from prior years. So that's what we look at in that fund is the unrestricted net position to tell us if that fund is healthy or not. So one thing we do get asked a lot for that fund is what's the right amount of unrestricted net position to have. $12.2 million might sound like a lot. However, if you have an unanticipated repair or other maintenance that comes up that you have to fund, it does get expensive very quickly. So while $12.2 million may seem like a lot, you need to look at what you think is the right amount of net position to have. Are there any questions on the numbers?
I just have a question, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Joseph.
So the minimum maximum fund balance for that has been much debated. Is there a metric that you use to determine, because obviously there are so many things that are unforeseen, collapses and water main breaks, things like that. Do you look at, is there a guidepost, 6 months of revenue, 6 months of expenditures, dollar amount? Should we have a plan to bond out, emergencies over a certain dollar amount? So anything over $3 million, we bond out, under, we pay, things like that.
So I think, that's a good question. So it's a little bit different with an enterprise fund. So I know you're probably thinking like general fund, everyone always says, 25% or whatever. There's kind of a magic number. I think the key with water and sewer is what you're talking about, David, is taking a look at, you need to have what types of reserves. So we need to have an emergency reserve. Okay, how much would that be? So working with your engineers to say, okay, if we had a major emergency, like is $1 million enough? Like what's the right amount to have? And you do have your bond ordinance or your water and sewer ordinance that speaks to some of this. And tries to account for some of those items. So I think it's important to have those specific reserves. And then obviously cash flow wise, you need to be able to make sure you're maintaining the ability to pay bills. The big indicator that we often look at just in terms of like, are your current costs covering, are your current users of the system covering the current costs to run the system? And that we'd be looking at that operating loss line. Okay, so this year it wasn't. It was down by about $600,000. Now, as you are growing, you have tap fees and other things that kind of help offset that. At some point, that will stop, right? So it's important to look at that number. The other thing I would say is looking at the trend in the unrestricted net position. So Chrystal mentioned that, but trending it over like the last 5 years. So has it gone up? Has it remained relatively consistent? I think once you get that number to be pretty close to where you're comfortable that you could meet emergencies, that you could, function from a capital perspective, from an operational perspective, if that number remains relatively consistent, then that means the current users are covering the current costs. So you don't necessarily want to always see that unrestricted amount continue to go up. You don't really want to see it to go down. You kind of want to see it remain stable. If it goes up a little here or there, it goes down a little bit, I think that's okay. But it's really the stability of that unrestricted net position amount that I think is the key amount when you're looking at evaluating how the fund's doing over a period of time, if that helps.
It does. Just a quick follow-up, if I may,
Sure.
Mr. Supervisor. So, the difficult thing to try to explain to residents when they're asked about their water rates and the enterprise fund, the enterprise fund is directly connected to product. So, water cost, sewage treatment costs, and then the residents are billed accordingly. So, when you have part of the water bill takes into account the maintenance of the system, and not everything is a direct dollar for dollar. We get charged this much, so we have a lot of other costs built into the water bill. But by and large, the enterprise fund is funded by residents and the customers of water and sewer treatment.
Correct.
So you can't raise taxes to pay for water. It goes.
Correct.
And complicating it, we don't have control over the product. So we purchase the product from a third party,
Yep.
and we have really very little control over that. When the water rates go up, what's the argument back for, and I realize that we would have to lay out why we need X amount of dollars in an enterprise fund. So we're trending down about $600,000 this year, and I understand the tap fees sort of offset that. How long do you go using enterprise fund surplus to cover the increases to keep the water bill down? Again, I guess that's attached to that magic number where we have to get comfortable with what we want in the enterprise fund. But it's an area that's divided the board and really residents for some time.
Sure.
What that number should be is really the way that the bill then gets structured. And, I don't know if you can offer any more insight or help, in this area, but it's something that's been in need of being addressed for some time. Because it only pops up really when people really take a look at it, when we get notice that the water bill is going to go up because, the Great Lakes Water Authority is raising rates. And, well, what about the money I pay now? And there's millions in there already, and so forth, so.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. A lot of it obviously is policy, which is, but I do think that, and I've seen this done a lot of places, is setting a certain policy. That way you don't have to, it's not an annual discussion. So every time you get a rate, from Great Lakes Water Authority, you're not having the same discussion over and over. So, we really encourage our clients to adopt some type of policy. So, an example of one would be, well, we're going to pass through the rates. Whatever the increase is, we're going to pass that through. Or we're always going to pass through the rates plus, 0.5% because you have administrative costs, right? So your costs, healthcare, and all those other things for your employees are always going to go up. But something like that where it's not an annual discussion, right? Because that can get kind of tiresome, or like you feel like you're, beating your head against the wall, having the same discussion every single year. So we really encourage that. Like, it might take a while to get to a policy that everyone's comfortable with, but I think ultimately it ends up saving headache year after year, like if you kind of go through that painful phase once versus going through it every year. So I don't know if that helps. But
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Treasurer Lafata.
Pam, when I look at the enterprise fund, what I look at is the cash flow every year. It's the beginning balance and the ending balance. Actually, I use that as a report card to find out actually where we wound up our net effect. When you look at our operating loss is influenced by the depreciation that's put in the cost of in our budget. It actually comes back as a cash asset at the end and goes into the enterprise fund, so it kind of skews the fact that it looks like you lost money, but you actually took cash in to cover it.
Yeah, so, so the only argument for that is if you do not include depreciation in your rates, when your assets are depreciated, you will have no money to pay for new assets. So that's the only hesitation with not building depreciation in.
What I think though, one of the problems is we take in depreciation, but we don't put that much back into the assets every year, so.
Well, no, and you won't every year. It's not going to
No,
be,
I
you know,
know.
but it's because eventually, when you do have to repair, 5 miles of pipe, it's going to be $10 million or.
It should be there.
Yeah, exactly. Theoretically, yes.
Any further questions for the board, from the board on this topic? Continue
Okay.
on.
All right. Do we have, I think we were just going to cover the letter as well, which is just a few pages. So I won't go into all the detail. I know you've had a few days to take a look at it. Some standard verbiage that we have every year, just discussing the audit and how our plan went. Everything went according to plan. We do have quite a few things in the back, the last 3 or 4 pages on legislative updates. We know, and I know you know, that the state continues to pass additional legislation specifically related to a legacy cost, so your pension and retiree health care. I think in the last year and a half alone, there was 2 different bills, PA 530 and then PA 202, that were passed related to reporting and various requirements. So that's something that the township will have to comply with as well in terms of filing all the required reports. So legacy issues continue to be something that this current administration at the state level has been focusing on. So it'll be interesting to see come November kind of what happens on a go forward basis, but that has been a big thing. The GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, that's who sets the rules for how you have to report everything. They're on that same path, and so the township will be implementing a new accounting standard next year related to your retiree health care liability. That liability is right around $9 or $10 million as of the last valuation. However, you are, I think, right over 60% funded, somewhere right around there. So that is very good, I have to say. I mean, I think you should feel good as a board and the township employees and management of what you've done in terms of addressing that liability in really a relatively short period of time. So the board has done a good job at taking a look at that and how are we going to combat the fact that we've promised we have these obligations that we've promised and now we have to pay for them. So pension, you're well funded. You're right in that kind of 70 to 80% range, which is where MERS would like to see all of their entities. And then retiree health care, you're up above that state minimum, which I can't stand in front of many of my clients and say that. So that's a good thing. And I know you're continuing to look at that and address, if there are excess funds, how to continue to kind of fund that. So that'll be key going forward. But in part of your long-term strategic plan, I'm sure, as you move through that. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, you do still have some challenges. You still, there is still a decent amount out there, but I think you're doing a very good job in terms of working towards those. So I would commend the board for doing that.
Any further comments, questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time and your effort.
I'd like to thank Pam and Chrystal and Vicki Bauer, our finance director. Lots of changes last year, from budget amendments to breaking out specific costs into specific budgets. A lot of long-term
Yes.
looking throughout this past year, and there'll be more. We still have a lot more work to do. But very impressive, Ms. Bauer, how she's always got the GASBs and the debits and credits and chasing every penny, and she's very proud of minimal journal entries or adjustments.
Yes. Yep.
In this process, we work with Plante Moran, the 3 full-times, and myself, seems like all year. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Item 5, department reports. Looks like we have one. Mr. Coddington. Good job.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to update everybody. The Great Lakes Water Authority should be voting June 13th for all the increases that's coming this year. And the reason it's taken so long, there are several communities that they're still working out their contracts. Us also being one of them. We're very close with our stuff. And that increase will be coming on July 1st. I don't want to speculate on what it is, but right after June 13th, we'll be able to know, and we'll have more information available on that. So I wanted to let y'all know that.
Thank you. Any further departments? Move on to item 6, the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments are permitted on the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda include item 6A, the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 21st, 2018, approval of the agenda, and approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Support by Supervisor Acciavatti. Discussion. Or from the public. Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Supervisor Acciavatti to approve the consent agenda. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Motion prevails. Item 7 is the regular agenda. 7A, approve the recommendation by the Supervisor's Office to appoint Marc Reneau to the Planning Commission to fill the remaining term of Frank Eckenrode, whose term will expire June 1st, 2019. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Joseph.
Is Mr. Reneau here tonight?
He is.
Welcome, Mr. Reneau.
Mr. Reneau has been a Chesterfield resident for 14 years and currently is in charge of the lending division with First State Bank. Very impressive. Reached out to me approximately a year ago. We've had several meetings since then. Seems to have a lot of energy and wants to get involved with this community. A lot of knowledge on development, building, and our entire community. I think he'll be a great member to the Planning Commission. Mr. Eckenrode moved out of Chesterfield Township. That's why this term will actually expire November 19th. It'll only be for November of 19. It'll be a 1 year to fill out the remaining part of that term. Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. Welcome aboard. 7B, approve the recommendation by the Supervisor's Office to reappoint Carl Leonard to the Planning Commission with a term to expire June 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor or Trustee Demink. And Carl is here, and I think everybody on this board knows Mr. Leonard. And his 16 years approximately of serving on between the ZBA and the Planning Commission. Any questions, comments from the board?
Just a quick comment, Mr.
Trustee
Supervisor.
Joseph.
First, I want to, I didn't have any questions, just wanted to let the board know what a pleasure it is to serve Mr. Leonard's. Very thorough. I know, Brian, you and I have talked, there's some members of that board that just know things, inside and out. They come to the meetings prepared. Mr. Leonard is definitely one of those guys. It's a pleasure to serve with him. There was an issue that was raised at our last Planning Commission meeting, and I just wanted to share. The question became, under the sort of old system, a member who was interested in continuing service would simply write a letter saying, I'd like to continue service. And I was asked by a few members, that policy's changed, and I think it's changed for the better. And specifically, it requires any board commission member whose term is expiring to submit a request to the supervisor. The supervisor reviews that request and evaluates instead of a rubber stamp where somebody just continues to serve year in and year out. And the candidates were invited into a brief interview and a discussion with the supervisor. And that application or interest in renewal is collected together with other community members who may have an interest, and rather than just perpetuating, members over and over and over, Supervisor has decided to take a look at these as they come up. And I think it gives the residents the best possible board on every level, whether that be planning or ZBA or parks or beautification or whatever it is. We have people who are actively engaged that want to continue or want to be part of it. And I think it's a great change in the way that we operate. And I appreciate, Mr. Leonard, your continued interest, very valuable member, and I appreciate very much serving with you on the Planning Commission. So thank you.
Trustee Demink.
I'll agree. Carl, David, you've worked with him a few years. We worked together for 7-8 years, Carl, when I was on planning. He does a great job, like the other members. Everybody's well-versed in different backgrounds and things, and I think you found that out, David, from your term on there. So, Carl, welcome, and you do a great job, and I enjoyed working with the years that I was on planning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph. We have been looking at everything, and board appointees, I think, are extremely important, so we did change that process a little bit, and I appreciate your comments that you think that feel it's going to be a positive change. Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Vosberg to reappoint Carl Leonard to the Planning Commission, term expiring June 1st, 2021. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. Thank you, Carl. A request, or 7C, a request by the Township Board to approve the Township Supervisor to execute a professional engineering services contract with OHM Advisors in the amount of $12,500 from General Ledger number 591000140 for the design of the Salt River Water Main Relocation Project. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry. Discussion. We do have members from Orchard Hills in the climate here, if they would wish to come up to the podium.
This is to design that water line on the east side of Jefferson, correct, for when the replacement of the bridge. This is what's being required by the road commission, is that correct?
That's correct. As we've been speaking about the last several board meetings and many members of this board for the last year, the Jefferson Road Bridge over the Salt River is in critical condition and is slated to start construction if everything goes well in February. However, as the design has progressed, there's existing Chesterfield Township owned infrastructure, primarily our water main, which is 60 years old, and cast iron that crosses the Salt River, that is going to be dangerously close and potentially in conflict with the new piers that are going to be required for the bridge. Because it is a federally funded project and it's also going to be let through the Michigan Department of Transportation through the Macomb County Road Commission, because of that nature of the funding stream, the cost of actually putting in the water main will be covered by the bridge project. However, we own the water main as Chesterfield Township, so we are charged with the design portion only of that piece.
And we don't have to worry about the sewer line, because if I recall right, the sewer line is on the other side of the bridge, correct? It's on the west side.
It's on the west side and it is far enough removed from the scope of the new bridge where it will not be affected.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Joseph.
Excuse me. The engineering services here, OHM. How did we arrive at OHM? What was the process, and how did you come to decide OHM was the best fit?
Well, we've had a year's worth of discussions on our engineering firm that Chesterfield Township's used for 30 or 40 years. I did bring up several projects, and it seems to be an ongoing issue with this board. We discussed this specific project a couple of meetings ago. I serve on the Michigan State Board of Professional Engineers, and with Jim Stevens, who is here, we struck up a conversation about his firm and what they do and the challenges that we have here in Chesterfield, and we sent him over some information. That is a firm I am familiar with. They do municipality-only work, and I was very impressed with the resume and very impressed with what they do, and also very impressed with the scope of work that they sent over.
As we move forward now with the development of our new professional services procurement process, this looks like a good opportunity to see the value of OHM. This project is a big deal in our community, and obviously we can get a feel for all of the engineering needs that we have moving forward. And have you got any indication as to whether or not OHM may be interested in being a provider on an ongoing basis, or is this a project that they specialize in and maybe, you know, an isolated project? Is this potentially a long relationship?
A lot's happened here in the last several months, as you guys know, as everyone on the board knows, with purchasing policy specifically related to professional engineers, engineering services. One, Mr. O'Connor started today, so our township engineer in-house started today. You've all seen the draft of the new RFQ for professional engineering service, or multiple engineers for the township. I do believe that this firm will be more than capable, and hopefully we get multiple firms with their resume that could potentially be our township engineer. So hopeful that we'll have many options to choose that partner once we get to that point.
Well, I appreciate your work on this. I know this was a requirement in order to take advantage of this project. We had to have this engineering work done very quickly, and it's the first part of a multi-step timeline where we don't fulfill our obligation, we lose a great opportunity. So this was something that needed to be done quickly, and I think you did a very nice job, so thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions to the board? Trustee DeMink.
I'm good.
I don't know if Mr. Stevens, if you could give a quick overview of your firm, not to put you on the spot here. And
Sure. I'm Jim Stevens with OHM Advisors. I'm a partner with the firm. I've been with the firm for about 20 years. OHM Advisors is about a 450-person firm located, headquartered in Livonia, Michigan. We have about 14 offices throughout Ohio, Michigan, and Tennessee. I'm located in the Auburn Hills office. My colleague's a project manager with the company, Steve Siklich. As Supervisor Acciavatti has stated, one of the things that's a little bit unique to OHM Advisors is our mission is advancing communities. And in Southeast Michigan, we really only work for government. We work for local municipalities, road commissions, the Department of Transportation, water resource commissioners, county public works. We don't work for private developers. But we're a firm that started as a municipal engineering firm in 1962, and now we're a full service a firm with architects, planners, landscape architects, again with about 450 people with 14 offices. So we're excited at the opportunity. We've certainly done projects very similar to this throughout Southeast Michigan in terms of likely this will be a horizontal directional drill under the river in coordination with MDOT LAP Bridge project. So pretty straightforward project. Certainly got a little bit of tight timetable, but we're certainly excited for the opportunity, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Treasurer Lopata.
In that area, in that area where the new water main's going, there's the bridge construction, there's the Warwick Paddle Park construction, there's the Michigan Department of Natural Resources is going to be dredging. I'd be interested in seeing a preliminary timeline to see how all this is going to fit, so that there's no overlap or anything that would require a stop and start or a duplicate in efforts or cost.
I haven't shared too many of the details of projects around this one with with Jim just yet, but I'm very confident. The scope of the water main design, the unique piece about this one, they're going to be designing the water main, and it's going to be end up on the bridge plans that get let through MDOT. And if we got any specific comments, there's a project just north of this that is going to be developed after or right when the bridge gets developed, and it's a township-owned park.
I mean, certainly when we get into details, we'll coordinate all that. I mean, one of the things that we pride ourselves on really is being advisors to the community and thinking holistically. So we don't just think about this project. I mean, I think as a township, you expect as you're hiring an engineer that we'll do the project. That's a given. I think where we try to add extra value is to make sure you don't have problems with coordination with other projects, because we didn't think about something that was, you know, right next door, right down the street. So certainly as we get into details and understand some of those other things that may have an impact here, we'll make sure and that timeline is laid out and that coordination occurs so you don't run into rework or problems and extra costs and those types of things.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I appreciate Treasurer LaFata's comments, because we do have a lot going on in that area, and I really do appreciate your response, keeping an eye on projects that are in close proximity as they relate to the one that you're being contracted for, so that's comforting. It's also very comforting to hear a guy come to a podium and say, horizontal drilling under a river, you know, pretty straightforward stuff, so that's good to hear too, so welcome, thanks.
Any further comments from the board? Motion, how about the public? Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry, to approve the request by the Township Supervisor to execute the professional service contract with OHM Advisors for $12,500 for the design of the Salt River Water Main Relocation Project. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Motion prevails. Thank you, gentlemen. 7D, approve a request by Public Works to purchase meter and meter components from Ferguson Waterworks at a total cost of $9,209.77 from General Ledger 591-542-740.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Demink.
Support.
Support by Trustee Vosberg. Director Coddington.
This is our usual meters and meter components, part that we try to come back every month and be transparent with you guys. This is our ongoing, most of this is for new construction. We do have a lot of great new construction, which is good news, and it's going to continue to keep going. The year looks great. So this is mostly for new construction, the meter and components here.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Director Coddington, you spoke this afternoon, or excuse me, this morning at a department head meeting and was talking about a lot of the new taps that are going in and a lot of the new development that's going on. Do you see that perhaps in a future request that you may have to increase the request, or do you think that that this is going to be enough on an ongoing basis?
We can do more than this at a time, but we're just kind of going month to month basically on this as we go. So we don't. Some of these stuff is very expensive, so there's no reason to hold on to a bunch of stock of it, realistically.
Thank you.
I think we've seen along that line, we've seen equipment that was purchased in bulk. By the time maybe the shelf life didn't expire, the technology had changed. So I like your strategy. I think getting a good idea on an ongoing basis is a smart way to go here. We don't want to be in a situation where we have stuff sort of passing its prime in our stock room. So it's a good strategy.
Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails.
Thank you.
7E, stay right there. Approve a request by Public Works to purchase Sonetics Portable Wireless System from Bell Equipment Company at a cost of $7,250 from General Ledger number 591-441-740. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry. Discussion.
So this piece of equipment
works mostly along with our Vector that you all helped us purchase. Thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, when this Vector's in service, it is a very loud machine. You can barely communicate with each other, right next to each other, next to this, let alone the damage that it's doing to our employees' ears as it is. So this makes everything safe. We can also use this with crews on either end of this Vector. If we're in the middle of the road working, they can be listen to everything that's going on. They can work traffic control from both ends, when they're not talking, it's a heck of a sound deadener and will help protect their ears. And for the crews working upstream and downstream with them, it works for the same purpose. Everybody can hear what's going on, and it's a safety item, and it is essential, and it's something fairly new in the market, and we can certainly use it.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this. Just wondered if there are other products out there, or how you came across this one.
We have researched, but for the type of situation we want to work in, this is like the best that we have. I've talked to all of our vendors, and this is the best product for the situation that we need it for.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board?
Just quick, I'd like to point out that in your packet, you did submit invoices, potential invoices from other vendors. So for this piece of equipment, this is the most economically priced vendor. Is that correct? Thank you.
I know my preliminary discussions, and I was a little skeptical when I first saw this come across. They're pretty expensive communication devices. However, knowing the nature of the business and the increase in productivity along with the increase in safety, it's something I support and I think will be of value here. Treasurer LaFata.
You mentioned that the noise from the vac truck is, very, very high. Is it above 80 decibels?
Oh, I believe it's way above 80.
Because if I'm not mistaken, my OSHA says that if you work and buy any equipment that's over 80 decibels, you have to have a process and a procedure in place, proper hearing, pre-testing of employees and everything else. So I'm just wondering where we sit with that.
We can research that, but when you're standing right next to that truck, I would believe it's over 80.
Well, yeah,
We do use the hearing protection, but it's...
Yeah, I'm, not so much concerned about the money, but somebody could incur hearing loss if we're exceeding my OSHA requirements.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry, to approve the request from Public Works to purchase Sonetics Portable Wireless System from Bell Equipment Company at a cost of $7,250. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Motion prevails.
Thank you all. The crews will really appreciate that. Thank you.
7F, approve a request from JD and SY Inc. for a fireworks vending permit variance for a 20-foot by 40-foot tent at 29230 23 Mile Road, Chesterfield, Michigan 48047 for the sale of fireworks from June 23rd, 2018 through July 4th, 2018. Business hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry,
Support.
support by Trustee Vosberg. If the vendor's here, and I do see somebody coming up to the podium.
John Sedgman on the SYD. I'm just here in case there's any questions.
Question to the board.
Not a question, Mr. Supervisor, but a comment just so that the board is aware that the applicant has submitted all required documentation to us. It's in your packet. Also, their request for their variance is consistent with others as far as the size of the tent as well as the hours of operation.
Trustee Demink.
Everybody on this board knows I'm voting on this, but I just like to state something. This will be the 5th fireworks tent on 23 Mile Road. Hank, you and I have been on this for years. We got 2 more in Gratiot.
This is my 5th year at this.
Okay, there's something else I'm going, it's nothing against you personally, sir, but how many of these do we have to have? And I know Hank, you worked on some things with Cindy for an ordinance that went to planning. And I'm really thinking this board should really consider our entire tent ordinance and just maybe do away with all tents in the township. Because I just think it's bringing down the aesthetics of this township. There's more and more of these fireworks tents. Like I said, 5 on 23 Mile Road alone by my correct count. Cindy, am I close? I think I'm pretty darn right.
Yes.
2 on Gratiot.
That's correct.
You know, and I know I brought up the last time about the big vendors, what they pay. But maybe it's this time, this board, we should all get together and do away with tent cities. Just totally do away with them. Then we're not violating anybody's rights because these fireworks ordinances changed. Sorry to say it to the larger stores, but I hear it from residents. David, I know you've had people call you on certain things. Hank, you and I have been on this. This has been our platform for several years since you and I have been on this board, but it's just, I keep seeing these tents. I don't think it brings good-looking things that we want to this township prevail. And I know it's coming, it's at planning. David, I think didn't you have a public hearing the other night? Maybe at planning commission or when it comes back to this board, the members of this board should just maybe take a big look into this and maybe just say, you know what, we're done with tent cities. You don't see them in Macomb Township. I was told Macomb Township, only one fireworks tent. It's got to be on a green space. It can't be in a parking lot. It's just my 2 cents. I just thought I'd bring that to my fellow board members of my thoughts, and maybe we need to all put our heads together on this. And hey, it's our township. And I think we all want it to look better, but these tent sales have just gone out of control in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the sentiment, and I know exactly where you're coming from, Trustee, to make the difficulty is we have sort of a double-edged deal. You know, we have long-standing relationships with community partners like Art Van and ABC Warehouse and a whole host of others that do annual tent sales, and it's a big income generator for them. But when we open the door to them, then we run into a problem where we're picking what type of product, and that violates the law. You also have state legislation that I think, I know when the legislation was passed, anybody that pays attention to what goes on in Lansing knows there was a wave of lobbying that came across and a lot of influence from some of these national fireworks manufacturers, and they were very successful in lobbying legislators. And statewide, those same legislators have heard the same complaints that we've heard, and I think that there's some I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a dramatically different fireworks legislation before next year's big 4th of July. But I do know, in talking with Mr. Siebert, there is more we can do in terms of properly preparing ordinances and voting on them in the proper procedure to dramatically reduce the things that have us getting calls, all the way through the 4th of July season. These are very, very traumatic things. They're not light, and I realize that you have a legal right to sell them, so I don't want to dump this all, at your feet. But Trustee Demink is right, and Trustee Anderson gets the calls. Get some very sad calls from residents who are dealing with loved ones who are coming back from very difficult places, fighting for this country, suffering from PTSD, and these loud, mortar-type fireworks that go off around their house really create a very, very ugly place for them in their own home. We hear from those calls. We hear calls from elderly residents who can't sleep. We hear calls from pet owners and parents with small children. When Chief Gersten goes out and tries to enforce, the hours, of course, people are long since scattered, and it is quite a nightmare. So there's a whole host of problems associated with, these tents and these vending permits. We certainly can do more, and I agree with you. I think we should collectively work, and I'm confident in our attorney to draft us the, very deftly worded ordinances to bring this in line with neighboring communities, because I think you're 100% right, Trustee Demink.
Thank you, Dave.
Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, just real quick. Trustee Dominka, you hit all the salient points here. At least the gentleman here, at least from Warren, two of the vendors descending on our township are residents of the state, the best as I recall. We had one gentleman a couple of weeks ago very upset because he had to tie up his time driving in 4.5 hours from Indiana, and he was deprived of his constitutional right to sell fireworks on 23 Mile Road. Well, right now we're up to 7 vendors on June the 4th. Maybe we should try to capitalize this and on our website for the township advertise to the county of Macomb and other environments, please come in our community, please buy some beverages and that as you load up with your fireworks for the holiday. And with that, I'll go back to you.
Quick comment. This is, I'm pretty sure this will probably be the last variance for fireworks tents. This will be our 3rd meeting at least discussing this. Had a similar discussion a year ago with regarding the same issue, and it's with fireworks vendors, frankly. And I think it's important to separate the two issues, which Trustee Joseph laid out pretty clearly. There's state laws out there. The use of commercial fireworks is something that we cannot regulate outside of the influence of what the state of Michigan requires us to do. There's a lot of chatter about what's going on in Lansing. However, looking at all of our ordinances, we've changed many of them. We're continuing to change more. A committee with Clerk Berry and Trustee Anderson are working on this one specifically. And I'm an all options on the table type of an individual, and the best idea will rise to the surface. The idea of getting rid of them all. I'd like to hear the idea, but I think it might be a little bit too broad of an approach, but let's see where it gets done. I would like to update that ordinance relating to all of our tents. I'd like to make some of our vendors, make it easier for them. And so that a year from now, we're not right back here talking about why the ordinance is not updated. And I look forward to taking the work that Clerk Berry and Trustee Anderson have started. I think it's going to end up right in the Planning Commission here pretty quick. There's multiple layers of regulatory changes that have to happen. And maybe Clerk Berry can expand on, I think I jumped you in when you were going to speak here on how that process comes along, and let's get this right before next year comes around. But I do want to be clear that there's two issues. The discharge of fireworks will not be affected by the location and size of vending in our community without the state.
Day before, day of, and day after, but just like last weekend, Saturday night, somebody was, I don't know if Hank, you could hear it from your house, somebody was blowing them off for 2 hours, it's like.
Well, now
skid somebody, I think.
That's a different issue. So when there's a violation of the law, now that is a Chesterfield Township public safety issue, and that's something that's kind of hard to find it when you see it and hear it and who did it, and you don't see nothing. But those are things that we can work on to get better, and I look forward to working with this board to get it as right as we can, knowing the constraints that we are under. Clerk Berry.
Well, in the work that Trustee Anderson and I have done, it hasn't been just us. We have consulted with Township Attorney many times. Chris Anderson has been an integral part of crafting the language on it, as well as representatives from planning, building, public safety have always been part of the conversation with us, and I think we've covered just about every aspect that you can think of with regards to this issue. And what's come out of that is that there's 2 ordinance changes that are required. One is a statutory ordinance change, the other one is a regulatory ordinance change. And the statutory ordinance changes needed to go through the planning department, and therefore it has to satisfy all of the requirements for that. So the public hearing was posted, had the public hearing, and I believe it's going to be coming up in front of planning their next meeting next week for their recommendation. But the language and how it was crafted and the solutions came from a number of meetings over the course of a couple of months from all of those parties participating as well. The regulatory end of it is something that the board approves, so what you will see on a future board meeting is you will see both of those ordinances presented simultaneously. You will see your statutory ordinance as well as a regulatory ordinance, because they cover two different parts of this issue. So again, those are things that we've come up with some very creative ways to address a lot of those issues, and I'm sure that Jonathan Palin, our planning director, who had a lot to do with crafting it, he actually did some brilliant work on it and took some an ordinance from another community and crafted that such that with Chris Anderson, so that would work for Chesterfield, and came up with, I think, some really exciting solutions. Gary DeMaster as well also filled in a piece of that to address things in a way that hopefully allows us to still have tent sales, so not to deny some of our other partners their tent sales, but also be able to take a very thoughtful and administrative look at any tent request that comes in. So it will take into account the site plan, the site location, whether it's on grass, whether it's on concrete, all those various issues, how large the size of the property is. And 20 by 80 might be acceptable if you're looking at a 2-acre lot that it's on, but however, that wouldn't be acceptable on, a small area. So they've really looked at this at all those different, from all those different angles, and I would expect that when it does come in front of the board, that all of those individuals who are a part of crafting the changes on those ordinances will be here to answer all of your questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve the request from J.D. and S.Y. Inc. for a fireworks vending permit variance for a 20-foot by 40-foot tent at 29230 23 Mile Road for the sale of fireworks from June 23rd through July 4th, 2018, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Demink.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion prevails. There are no addendum. Item number 9, public comment. If you wish to address the board, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Going once, going twice. That's it. Bring it up to the board. Trustee Demink.
I'm good. I already said what I had to say at the last agenda item. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Just congratulations again to Marc Reneau and Carl Leonard for your positions on the Planning Commission. Look forward to the products and work coming from the committee. And also, I see in the audience Jeff Berry, and he works for the county's fleet manager in the Sheriff's Department. He received an award last month for professional excellence. And I happened to see video of that presentation. They could not say enough good about all the things that Jeff has done in terms of saving money for the department. It's all at the county level, so that's all of our tax dollars as well. So congratulations again.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Berry, congratulations on your on the Certified Municipal Clerk level you've attained. Continue with your growth here. And I'd like to thank the Anchor Bay Anchor Bay High School Junior ROTC that have posted the colors during this year. Thank you, sir.
Trustee Joseph.
Well, I'd like to say hello to all the Berries. We stick together. The whole Berry crew is here tonight, supporting Mom and Dad. So congrats on your award, and Ms. Berry, your work with the clerk's certification. I'd like to welcome Mr. O'Connor. Your arrival in our township has been a long time coming. We're hoping and expecting great things out of your office, and we're very glad that you're here. Looked like, Ms. Vosberg, we had a great Historical Society weekend as well. Good weather, good turnout. And another great event in the township this weekend was our fire department open house. Looked like great participation, a lot of residents having a good time and supporting the brave men and women of the Public Safety Department, specifically our fire department this weekend, so that was good to see. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get out there. I'm feeling a little rough today still, but looked like some great events going on in the township, and very, very proud of the direction we're taking. I really did appreciate, Mr. Supervisor, the inclusion of OHM now in some of our big projects and some of the big things that we have coming to the township, as we saw tonight from our Plante Moran audit, that the tap fees and the new development are actually keeping us on pace with some areas that maybe need a little attention. So despite the loss in revenue from the water rate increases, the development and the work that's being done, individuals interested in moving their businesses, their home, raising their family in Chesterfield, continues to put us in a very positive path. And I like our leadership, and despite the fact that every board meeting or so we have a little dust up, we obviously care enough about our township to go and debate very heavily issues that impact us. So things are moving obviously in the right direction, and I appreciate your work specifically on this issue involving our engineers. So thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
For the sake of not being redundant and taking up time, I'll pass. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to thank everyone who came out for our summer shred day this weekend. We had an opportunity for residents to bring their sensitive documents to be shredded here at the township at no cost, and we had about 30 who came by, and were able also to participate in the Historical Society events as well, being right next door to us this weekend, so it worked out great. Our next community enrichment program is a great one. Trustee Joseph kind of alluded to folks starting their own small business here in the township. We have a Starting Your Own Small Business seminar that will be Thursday, July 19th from 9:30 a.m. until 12 p.m. Many of our programs are normally in the evening. However, this program is being held in the morning, as it is being presented by the Michigan Small Business Development Center, and they will be here on site. A lot of phenomenal resources available for anyone who wants to start a business. I know that my husband and I started our small business back in 1999 and sold it about 10 years later, but I wish we would have known then what we know now, and certainly would have loved to have had the resources available that the Small Business Development Center offers. So please take advantage of that. If you know anyone who is interested in starting a small business, if you've ever considered starting a small business, we highly recommend that you register for that program. There is absolutely no cost, and it's a tremendous opportunity. So I'd like to encourage everyone to do that. We have an upcoming election coming this coming August. If you need an absentee ballot, please, absentee ballot applications will be getting mailed this week. Please remember to return your absentee ballot application. Applications are being mailed this week. Please make sure to return that application. If you do not return that application to us, you will not get a ballot. So please remember to return that application to the clerk's office. If you do not receive it, or if you would like one, again, please contact us and we will be happy to send you another one.
Welcome to Mr. O'Connor. Today was his first day on the job, and lots of projects that our township desperately needs. You will not see anything immediately, but you will see an immediate push in a lot of plans on Mr. O'Connor's desk, or concepts related to virtually everything. Non-motorized paths. We had another horrific traffic incident on a pedestrian incident on Jefferson, which highlighted the need for better signage, better lighting. There is a path in that section. It just we've got to connect our place better. Sewer issues. There's pump stations that are going down, and water mains, water systems that are breaking, drains that are piling up. We have a grant that we're working on with NOAA through the Department of Great Lakes for the Brandenburg seawall repair. There's things going on at the Seville Manor site that is going to need his attention. Welcome aboard, and it's well overdue, and we're excited to keep all the infrastructure-related projects moving forward. One comment on our trash collection vendor and the concerns and service, mostly service-related concerns that I know my office, I'm not sure how many other folks on the board have seen primarily in the last couple of weeks. Like we've spoke about for the last year, and this board has seen many drafts of an RFQ. That process is going to really ramp up here in the next couple of weeks. We've had the same vendor, although a different name now, from Rizzo Environmental Services and now Green for Life as our trash vendor. We are going to be analyzing that vendor and going out for bids. At the end of it, Green for Life may still be our vendor if the team determines that they are still the best fit. But for the first time since 2005, we will be looking at that contract very, very closely. With the calls we've had, I think the service portion of that contract has got to be of pretty high up on the list. There's going to be a number of factors. Well, who's the best fit? How do they have the equipment and financial ability to do the job? Obviously, cost constraints and service. Because this last couple of weeks, whether it's receptacles that are broken or failure to pick up entirely, it seems like there's a never-ending list of issues. There is going to be help there, and it's going to be coming pretty soon in a new contract and a new contract for sure, and potentially a change in vendor depending on how the selection process goes. Item number 11 is the closed session. 11A, discussion regarding strategy and negotiation sessions pursuant to Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act.
Motion to go into open session, closed session.
Motion by Trustee Demink.
Support.
Support by Clerk Berry. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. We are in closed session at 8:13 p.m.
They never went cold.
Motion to re-enter open session.
Motion to go back in open session.
Motion by Trustee Demink.
Support.
Support by Trustee Anderson. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
We are back in open session at 8:26 p.m. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.